Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Food, Wine, and Travel Show, where we go across country and travel the world with members of the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association. Let's go. Welcome, everyone. You know, every second Tuesday, second Friday, and third Monday, we get to chat with members who are all part of the International Food, Wine, and Travel Writers Association. You can learn more if you go to IFWTWA.org. And today we get to welcome Marni Patterson back on the show. She's a freelance travel writer, photographer, and videographer based in Phoenix, Arizona, and you can keep up with her at mptraveling.com. And last time she was on the show, she was talking about her history adventures in Greece. And today she's talking about her history and culture adventures in and around Istanbul, which is so fascinating because, as she says in her article, which is up on nationalparktraveling.com, all the links are in the episode notes. This is really where East meets West. And it's really fascinating. And in a way, I think we could learn something if we all go there. So welcome back, Marni. How are you?
I'm fine. Thanks very much. And by the way, just wanted to make a note. My website is MP Travel Writing, not writer.
Sorry, writing.com. Yeah, so everyone check that out. The link is there in the episode notes, so you'll get it through right away. So, yeah, talking about the East meets West, it seems from your wanderings and from reading your article that even some of the places they have like Islamic art as well, like sitting next to Christian work, like just it's an interesting place to be where both sides seem to be okay today. But I mean, obviously history has had its moments in Istanbul, but seems like there's respect for both sides.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Turkey's kind of it's a mixed bag because it's a secular country. So, you will find, you'll see women with their headscarves and the long caftans. And then the next block you walk down, you see a girl, a couple girls walking by in t-shirts and jeans and sandals. I mean, it's just nobody cares. I mean, it isn't Saudi Arabia or Afghanistan where they're wearing those abayas that are black from head to toe. So it's a lot of that happened from 1923 on when Turkey became a republic. Ataturk was instrumental in just modernizing Turkey, requiring education for all, and just kind of bringing Turkey into the modern age. And so you see that today. There is a lot of traditional Islam, but it's side by side with a lot of Christianity because if you go way back before, I think it was 1453 when the Ottomans took over, before that, Istanbul was Constantinople, and it was extremely Christian under Emperor Constantine. It was a center of Christianity.
So it's so fascinating when you go to places with those shifts and changes. What was it like after going from Greece and experiencing all those historic sites that you did going here? Because you had a lot of monasteries there, also World War II history. You had a lot of cemeteries, just like where you were in Istanbul and in those surroundings. You went to a National Historical Park 80 cemeteries in it. Wow.
That was
that
was Gallipoli, and that was a really, really bloody battle for both sides. I mean, the Australians and New Zealanders got the brunt of it because they were part of the British Commonwealth. So when the British went to war in World War I as part of British subjects, so they were called up to serve, and most of the people who were involved in Gallipoli were Australian and New Zealand regiments.
And that's when they were connected to England, right? Because
yes,
it was England who started this.
Well, not exactly. I mean, it was World War I was kind of like a big set of dominoes or a house of cards falling down. You had all these empires, and everybody had these alliances. So if you were in country A and you were aligned with country B, and then let's say you were country C and D were also aligned together. Let's say C attacked A, everybody in B or anybody else who was aligned with them had to go to country A's aid. The people there might not even know what was going on, who was fighting, or why. It was like you were taking people, plucking them out of the field. They were simply plowing their land, trying to make ends meet. All of a sudden, they're drafted, the uniform, they teach them how to use a gun, and said, hey, if you see a guy who looks like this, shoot. And they had no idea why or what for. They just kind of got pulled into this. And that's pretty much what was going on with World War I. And so once everybody attacked everybody else, the whole house of cards fell down, and you had two empires. Let's see, the Russian And the British were against the Ottoman, Austro-Hungarian, and the German. And then you had some random countries join on either side. And then we didn't actually, people think of us being in World War One. We didn't actually get there until 1917. Everybody else, or just about everybody else, had been there since 1914. So we got there and it was sort of like we were fresh troops, finally, at
Hmm.
least from their point of view. So but that's, you had all these countries and they all just kind of came together like that. And if you were part of one alliance or the other, you had no choice. You had to fight.
Wow, wow, that's brutal. It's just, it's like, hey, you may have plans with your life, but you're going to go fight whether you like it or not. And that's
Mhm.
what's kind of even when we had the draft for Vietnam, people didn't quite, this is the way life it was.
What are we fighting
Mhm.
for? Don't ask me. I don't give a damn. Next
Exactly.
up.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right. But this is, we got right into, I say Gallipoli. I don't know. So that's just the way I was taught it in South Africa in school. And this is what's so amazing about this is you're bringing to life things that we probably learned about in school,
Uh,
and in your article, you said that this campaign had 500,000 casualties.
yeah, on both, even they were pretty much evenly split on both sides.
Right?
You go through Gallipoli National Historical Park, and every curve you go around, there's another cemetery. Some of them are dedicated to the Australians and New Zealanders. That's ANZAC. Let me see. That's
Mhm.
Australian National. The acronym just stands for Australia and New
In
Zealand
New
Corps.
Zealand.
And so when they say ANZAC, that's who they're referring to. And then the other ones are Muslim cemeteries. And these were for, I'll say the Turks, but technically they were fighting for the Ottoman Empire because Turkey didn't exist
Mhm.
yet.
Wow. Wow. And then you also went to the city of Troy. Now, this, I remember that in school with the horse, that everybody got on the horse. I'm sorry, I'm going back. Well, because you don't get to hear it. I mean, this is what's beautiful that Turkey is really becoming a destination, right? And so
Oh,
it's really, really hopping. And I know they changed their name, Turkey,
uh,
Turkey.
let's see, Turkey.
Turkey, but it's Turkey for, just to catch up on that. And, this was all this history we learned. And then to be able to set foot in these places that you just can only dream of when you're looking at the books and just that is, I think this is an epic destination just because of that history and to see it actually to be where these stories come from, because these stories as a kid to me were just larger than life. Like almost like even talking about Gallipoli, I don't know, I'm going to have to say it a different way, but that I remember being like, there's no way this is such a huge bloody war, and it's true, it happened, but going there makes it very real. Troy
Yeah.
to me would be definitely on my list of wanting to go.
Yeah, for Gallipoli, for Australians and New Zealanders and Turks, going to Gallipoli would be like Americans going to Gettysburg,
Yeah.
or Israelis, or really Jewish people, regardless of where they're from, going to Masada. It was
Mhm.
just an epic showdown, and it's sort of like people died here, and they just when they visit there, it's sort of like a place of reverence and honor. Back to what you were saying about Troy. That's very true. I remember learning about all the mythology in sixth grade. This brought the whole thing to life. You're in the place where this allegedly happened, because the Trojan War didn't happen the way Homer described it in the Iliad or in mythology. I mean, there was a Troy, and there probably was, at least from what archaeologists have found, it looks like there was a battle there sometime in the Bronze Age, around the so I think it was 1200 BC or thereabouts, because they found evidence of charred remains,
Mhm.
bones that they were hastily buried. It wasn't like somebody got a burial where people took the time. They just had to do it quickly, and fragments of weapons and stuff like that. And then also they referred to, when they found this site, they referred to the Iliad and things that Homer described, like the terrain. All those things made sense. And
Mm.
then the one thing that didn't make sense, but it did once they researched it more, was Troy was supposedly on the coast. But when they looked at it and said, well, Troy's not on the coast. How does this work? When you look back thousands of years, the coastline kind of shifted because of geology. And so back then, Troy would have been on the coast. So everything fell into
Huh.
place, and they said, yep, we found Troy. And so whether it happened the way it happened in mythology, probably not. Do you think everybody remembers that story from mythology?
I just remember it as a story. I didn't even think if it was mythology. It's kind of like Robin Hood, like, there's
Well,
a hint of truth in Robin Hood, but it's not the way it's told. You know what I mean? It's kind of that
Well,
way
yeah, I
for
think,
me.
they're finding what a lot of what Homer said was true, but probably the part about the gods and the goddesses and all this stuff probably wasn't true. I mean, basically, you have 3 goddesses who there was a
Yeah.
wedding and somebody was mad because goddess was mad because she didn't get invited. So she took an apple, and it was a golden apple, and it said, "To the fairest," or
That's
"To the
right.
most beautiful," and she dropped it on the table. And so Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite all claimed it.
Yeah.
And so they can just, of course, they were arguing. They turned to Zeus and said, "You decide." Of course, he was a little smarter than that. These were 3 powerful goddesses, and one was his wife. He was going to get in the middle of this one. So he said, "All right, I'm not going to decide. We're going to leave it up to a mere mortal, a shepherd boy, to make that decision." And he chose Paris. So Paris is tending sheep on Mount Ida. And all of a sudden, 3 goddesses and Zeus appear, and Zeus hands them the apples. "You decide." And Hera says, "If you choose me, I'll make you the ruler of Europe and Asia." Athena, who's a goddess of wisdom, says, "If you choose me, I will make you the smartest man alive and make you the most powerful warrior." Aphrodite says, goddess of love, she says, "I will give you the most beautiful woman in the world for your wife." So, of course, this is a no brainer for Paris. He chose Aphrodite. So, Aphrodite now had to deliver on her promise, and Helen was the most beautiful woman in the world. Little problem. Helen was already married to King Menelaus of Sparta. So, she had to cause Paris to meet Helen and make it possible for him to kidnap her and take her back to Troy. Now, Menelaus, of course, was not very happy when he found that his wife was gone. So he mustered his entire army and called on the armies of the other Greek states to go attack Troy. And so they all sailed across the Aegean, and that was the beginning of the Trojan War.
Crazy. It's kind
So,
of
yeah,
that crazy. That is crazy. Now we need to call Merlin. He would have sorted everybody out.
yeah, that's true. Now, then the thing is, you mentioned the horse. The way that this finally ended, according to the Iliad, the Trojan War went on for 10 years, and it
That's
just there
right.
was no end in sight. See, the walls of Troy were really, really thick. And that was another thing that they mentioned
Mm.
is that you look through the ruins and you've got these really, really thick walls. So the fortification was there. So the Greeks couldn't penetrate the city of Troy. So Odysseus came up with this idea. They built this horse, and that was what you're referring to earlier. And everybody has probably heard about the Trojan horse. In fact, there's one big model of one standing outside the city of Troy, and there's another one in the city of Tchernobyl, which is the nearest city of any size. And that's the one that was used in the movie Troy, the one with
Okay.
Brad Pitt and I think Amanda Seagraves was in that, and so Seyfried was in that, and so forth. But anyway, that was the movie Troy, and that's so there are 2 horses in that area that are said to look like what the Trojan horse looked like. So the Trojans woke up one morning. The Greeks were hiding. The Greek army was hiding out on an island, and so here's this big horse sitting at the city entrance. So somebody spread a rumor that Athena had given it to it as a gift to the city, and they didn't want to, antagonize Athena. She'd been fighting for the Greeks, and they figured, oh, she's going to support us now. Great, we better make sure that she's on our side. We'll bring the horse into the city. So, of course, the Greek army was in there. They were able to sneak out. They attacked the city, and that was the end of the Trojan War, at least according to Homer.
Wow. It's amazing. It's amazing. So did you enjoy being there and just did you feel like you needed longer time in each place, because of
Oh,
just for the because like when you talked like about Gettysburg, that's actually what went to my mind as soon as you talk about Gallip. Now I'm all messed up because I think it was Gallipoli. I don't know, but
Gallipoli.
Gallipoli. I know I've got different ways. It's different countries that I learned something, but just reading about that, and first thing I went, "Oh my gosh, this feels like how it was when we first went to Gettysburg." And I just did an interview on this too, actually, and literally we had to sit down. We were just the first time we were there, it was just very overwhelming with all the graves, the sites, the monuments, the cemetery with the no names on the different tombs, and it just it was so overwhelming.
You
I
see
don't
that too
think
at
you can
Gallipoli.
do it. You just can't do it in 5 minutes, because of the
Yeah, you
emotion.
see that also at Gallipoli. You'll see you'll see a tombstone that says John Smith, and it has his date of birth and then an approximate like August 1915 or something. They don't even have an exact date. Believed to be buried in somewhere
Wow.
here. So that's they don't know. There were so many casualties and so many deaths. They were overwhelmed.
Wow. So how long did you go to Turkey for? Were you
I was
there?
there for a week. I was there for the SATW conference, and
Okay.
the visiting Troy and Gallipoli was a press trip before the conference. So we were there. We got to see Troy, and then there was another city we got to see that before Troy,
Mhm.
and so Troy, and then Gallipoli, and then in Istanbul. And in the way they had the conference, you can't be in a place like Istanbul and not let people go out and sightsee. So they
Yeah.
had half a day. We got to bid or get to send in which trips we wanted for a half day of sightseeing and another one for a full day of sightseeing. So on the half day, there was so much to see, though. I mean, there I tried to make sure that I got to see the Blue Mosque and Hagia Sophia, and there's a spice market, and there's a larger the grape market, and then the one regret I got to go see the Basilica Cistern, but the one regret I have is I didn't get to see the Topkapi Palace. That was the where the sultans lived and where all the harems were, and that's supposed to be absolutely fascinating.
Oh.
But there are only so many hours and so many days. But it gives me an excuse to go back.
I know, I was gonna say, you gotta go back for sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the Sophia Hagia, that's where the 2 religions were put together, right? That's truly where the
Yeah.
East met the West.
Exactly. That used to be when Istanbul was Constantinople. So under Constantine, that was a cathedral, and it was it was Christianity all over. And so you go in there now, and you'll see these mosaics. You'll see Jesus Christ, and you'll see the Virgin Mary holding Jesus, and then you look out and you see all these caliphs. In other words, these are like the tenets of Islam. You got Muhammad, his son, and all the caliphs of Islam, and those are all over. Like when you're looking out over, it's like you're up on the balcony looking down, and the only people allowed down there are people who are of the Islam faith. But
Okay.
you can see everything from the balcony.
And going to mosques too, I mean, that's just special history as well. When I like going
Yeah.
into any of whether it's a Christian cathedral or going into a mosque, I just find it, fascinating and just to learn, to understand each other's point of view, you know what I mean? And belief systems. And I think there's a good deal of respect that we need to have when we go to these places too. And I loved at the end of your article, you gave some travel tips and to explain, because I think people are like, okay, what do I do? Do I have to dress differently? How do I behave? But definitely going into a mosque, you must obey the rules and have
Oh yeah.
respect.
Like the one in the picture behind you, that's the Blue Mosque. And
It's
that was
beautiful.
built that was built, I think,
Amazing.
in the 16 a sultan who took power, and he was a young guy, and of course everybody when they're in power they want to put their stamp on the world. This guy said, I'm going to build a mosque, and it's going to be greater and more magnificent than Hagia Sophia. So he built the Blue Mosque. And when you go in there, it really is just you just go, wow. I mean, you think, I wish I had everybody out of here in a gigantic camera with a big wide angle lens. You just want to capture every piece of it
Yeah.
because it's so gorgeous.
Mm.
But before you go into that mosque or any other, they have if you don't have a headscarf, they have at Blue Mosque they give them out for free. And at Hagia Sophia, you can buy one for about €1 or
Okay.
I think it's about 70 Turkish lira or something like that. But you put that on, and I mean, as long as and dress modestly. I mean, throughout Turkey. I mean, you can be dressed the way you want to, but you probably wouldn't want to walk down the street in shorts. No one's going to come out and beat you over the head with a stick, but you'll just get some kind of odd glances, like, "Why
Yeah,
are you
just be
dressed like that?"
respectful. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it just.
respectful. Yeah,
I mean, if
be
you just want to
respectful.
blend in, just wear a pair of pants or jeans and a short sleeve or long sleeve shirt or maybe a jacket. And in the mosque, they probably wouldn't even let you in unless
Mm,
in most Christian churches they won't even let you in
exactly.
if you're wearing shorts. I remember
Yeah.
we were in Malta one year. It was hotter than Hades. I mean, it was in like 100 degrees and 100% humidity. And we went to these two cathedrals that were there, and they handed out these things that you could tie around your waist that covered your legs because you're not allowed to wear shorts.
Yeah.
So even Christianity,
Mhm.
just if they do that, you just go kind of roll with it, and you get to see these wonderful places and get your some pictures that just will give you those wonderful memories.
These huge, buildings of devotion, right? Like you're saying, this is, hey, we've got into power, so I'm going to do these grand buildings. It's interesting because it's really a house of devotion, right? Because it's, it's a mosque, whether it's a cathedral, it's a house of devotion, but yet at the same time, it's about showcasing opulence too, right? And
Sure.
almost, isn't it also like for some maybe to show like their God, however you want to be it, right? That, hey, look what I've achieved. It's a sign of achievement, not just like, look at me, but it is a sign of achievement, you know? The, For the
That's
gods.
for the Blue Mosque. I mean, the guy said, "I want to build some." The Sultan said, "I want to build something that is more magnificent than Hagia Sophia as a tribute to Islam and Muhammad." And
Mm,
thousands of people go there every day, not only to pray but just to
mm,
see it. Another thing that just to mention to just for anybody who's listening who plans to go there, you'll be asked to remove your shoes anytime you go
yeah.
into one of these places. And in fact, I didn't realize they had places they have cubby holes where you can store your shoes. I didn't see those when I came in, so I was carrying my shoes around, and so here I was trying to balance a camera and my shoes, and I wanted to get a picture. So I put my shoes down so I had both hands to use the camera. And a lady came up to me and she pointed to my shoes and just said like, "No, no, no." And she pointed to the place where you store the cubby. Aha, got it. And took the shoes
Yeah.
over and put them there. Because before I was like, well, where do I put these? I mean, they want me to take them off, but I need both hands to use my camera. So it's just they consider the feet dirty, and
Mm.
since a mosque is considered to be sacred ground, you aren't allowed to walk in there with dirty shoes. And they
Well, yeah.
have also
We had to wash our feet in one that we went to in Durban in South Africa. We had to, they like not,
sure,
you're not scrubbing your feet, but it's like a smaller pool. And they have like, I remember that mosque had like it's like almost like an Olympic sized swimming pool, but it's not necessarily a swimming pool. It was like this big water feature. I was a little kid,
mhm,
11 or something, 12. And we took our shoes off and they had a section for the shoes. I remember that. But we had to walk through this little thing of water just to clean your feet before you go any
yeah.
further.
At Hagia Sophia, I'm not at Hagia Sophia. At the Blue Mosque, I don't remember seeing them at Hagia Sophia. And I can't speak for the other mosques, but there they have these faucets outside where you can sit down. Like I saw a lot of people sitting down and washing their feet before they went in. So that was they pray about 5 times a day there. As a matter of fact, I think I mentioned in the comments. One of these is at sunrise. So if you plan to, you don't want to be awakened at that time of the morning by somebody giving the call to worship, wear earplugs.
I
But
love that. I mean, when we lived in South
it-
Africa, I remember going to Cape Town a lot. In Cape Town and Durban, you're going to hear it because they had a lot of mosques. And I had a friend that go see, and I just remember going, "Oh, I'm in Cape Town," because it was like 4 in the morning and it was like right before sunrise even, and here it starts. But I loved listening to the sounds of it. I love it. I just, but I when Nancy had her magazine over there, I remember we had clients who were on the Muslim side of town in Port Elizabeth, and they did have their own section of this is the Muslim quarters or section as you go in, and they had this really huge mall, and I'd go to see a client and it was time to pray. And they're like, it's like noon, mid sentence, and it's like, it doesn't matter. They're praying. It's like,
yeah.
and I'm just standing there going, okay, just, I mean, and you learn, and I don't know, I love that sound. So I wouldn't want the earplugs. You might if you're battling jet lag, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing first thing in the morning. I mean, the rest of the day isn't a problem. It's just if you don't want to be
Yeah,
awakened first thing in the morning, wear earplugs
yeah.
when you go to bed. But yeah, the rest of the day it isn't a problem. It's kind of we were on our way. As a matter of fact, we had one of the nights we could pick a restaurant we wanted to go to. So we all gathered to go to the restaurant that we'd been assigned to go to. And ours was we were on the Asian side, and we had to take a ferry to go over to the European side, where of
Oh,
Istanbul, where our restaurant was. So we're going across, and you could see all of Istanbul lit up, and you could hear the call to worship. That was kind of interesting. I wish the
yeah.
boat hadn't been rocking so much. That would have made an interesting picture.
It would have, yeah. I mean, because that's magic. And Istanbul, I mean, even just going there, I would have been all giddy. I don't think I would have slept. I'd have been all excited because, but then, you are going to sleep at some point. What were lodgings like, just for people to know, like where to stay and that kind of thing? Are they mostly bed and
Well,
breakfast or resorts, hotels?
Well, on our press trip, remember now, we're on a press trip, so they're putting their best feet forward. We were in the first time we were in a very much Western type of hotel, and it could have been like a Ramada or Holiday Inn or anything like that. So we were there, and then let's see, breakfast. We came down in the morning, and they had a big buffet breakfast, and that's where the difference is. Most buffet breakfast buffets when you go to hotels in Europe or Asia, they'll put out breakfast for different parts of the world. You'll see the meat and cheese for Europe. You'll see
Mhm.
the eggs and bacon and baked beans and whatever else for the Americans, the Australians, and New Zealanders. But if you kind of bypass all that and go to all the different things that they have, well, you could get Greek or Turkish yogurt. There were olives, and try all the stuff that they had. It was it was a different breakfast, but that's what they eat. So why not give it a try? And
Mm,
so that's what we did. And let's see, in Istanbul, we stayed at a little, it was a smaller hotel. It was very nice. And the conference hotel was a big, I think it was a big Istanbul Conrad Hilton. So it was a very big, large
mm,
cosmopolitan Western hotel. So I can't really speak very much to like if you really get out into the bed and breakfast way out in the country or out in the, I
mhm.
can't speak to those because I didn't have that experience.
Yeah.
But the lodgings that we had were very nice. But
Mm,
as I mentioned, one of the things I told people to watch out for, the bathroom situation could be a little challenging, especially if you're outside Istanbul. Keep in mind you're not in the United States, so sometimes the toilet is nothing more than just a hole in the ground.
mm,
And so if you can work with that, it's not as daunting as it sounds, but if it really bothers you that much, there's usually a couple of Western style toilets because they have to accommodate people with knee and back
mm.
problems.
Okay.
But then also toilet paper, soap, and paper towels and so forth may not be in really big supply. So take like a package of Kleenex, hand sanitizer, and
Mm.
stuff like that. And you can make do.
Okay, that's good tips. And what about communication? How is that for people in regards to the English language? Maybe that would be a good start.
Well, let's see. Just about everybody we talked to spoke English, or there was a guide around who did speak English. And so we never really had too much trouble. I remember there was a restaurant, and even this is way out near Troy or out in the country, and the people there even spoke English. So
Right.
I'd say most people do. One
Mm,
interesting thing, I didn't mention it in my article, but one thing that people should know, it's kind of for the animal lovers that are listening. Turkey is very much, they have tons and tons of cats and dogs running
hmm.
around. And they're like everybody is their mommy or their daddy. So people put out food and water for them. And they may be stray, but they're very well taken care of. They
We
have
know you
excellent
like
care.
cats. And by the way, our cat, she's passed now, but her name is Athena, and we called her the goddess of beauty, brains, and everything. And she knew it. So, I think she was a Turkish, lady there.
Turkish
But
fan.
yeah, 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 I think so. Well, she really ruled the roost. But I've heard that from friends going over to Turkey that there's cats everywhere. They'll start sending me pictures. You got to see the cats because, we all love
Yeah.
cats, but
We
dogs too.
were
I
in
didn't
a
know that.
Yeah, dogs also. Everywhere we went, but they're just very
Of
chill. You
course.
can just go up and pet them and pick them up. One thing we were having lunch at this place, and they give you more food that you know what to do with. So
Mhm.
we had soup. Then they brought a salad. Then we had a like meat, potatoes, and or some kind of pasta and a vegetable and dessert. Most people didn't finish their chicken, so I looked outside, and all these cats are running around. And the people that own this place had about 5 cats. It was a mother that had a bunch of kittens. So they took all the leftover food and put it out, and their cats were eating it. But all these stray cats were hanging out outside the restaurant. So I
But
said,
come
"Hey,
on.
can you guys give me your chicken?" They said, "You're going to eat that?" I said, "No, they are," and
Yeah.
pointed outside. So I took it outside and just cut it, broke it into pieces and just started throwing it. And all these cats, had like 20 or 25 cats, all gathered around eating food, and then more showed up. I said, wait a minute, there's some new ones here. I didn't see these before. So I threw some out there for them. But it's sort of like word travels fast. Like, hey, free food next door. Everybody come on.
That's funny. So when you were going to the historical park, do they have signage that like interpretive signage and everything for people to be able to read? Or is it should you bone up on that before you go?
Well,
Or have a guide, might
we
have
had a
said.
guide. We had a
Awesome.
guide, but are signs, and they're available also in English as well as Turkish. So I think one of the pictures I sent you was of a statue. It was a monument of a guy. It was a Turkish soldier carrying an Australian soldier who
Yeah.
was wounded. And you immediately look at that and say, wow, there's a story here. What is it? And there's an inscription on the bottom of the statue. It isn't in English, but the guide explained it. What had happened was when you had the two sides fighting, you'd have them in trenches on this World War I. So you got trenches on both sides. And there's this big no man's land in the middle. Well, somehow or other, there was an Australian soldier out in the middle of no man's land, and he was wounded. And his own troops couldn't get to him to bring him back to safety. And he was out there just, nobody could do it without getting themselves killed. So a Turkish soldier held him a white flag. All the fighting stopped. He goes out, picks up the guy, and just walks over to Australian lines and puts him down without a word and walks back to his own lines. And then they started shooting each other again. It was one of those
Wow.
acts of compassion. You just go, wow, right in the middle of a war, these people hate each other. And this guy does this. Well, years later, this is a captain who, in the Australian regiment, who has, Gallipoli is now years late. It's now years later. The guy has gone to politics. He's now the Governor General of Australia. He goes back to Turkey to represent Australia at an Anzac reunion. This is the Turks, the New Zealanders, and the Australians giving a dedication on November 11th, which they call Remembrance Day, and we call
Hmm.
Veterans Day. So he gave a speech, and in the speech, he made reference to that incident. And his speech is now inscribed at the bottom of that monument. And that's in English as well as Turkish. And what he's just talking about is just the compassion of the Turks, not so much compassion, just the patriotism, how hard they fought.
And now it's like everyone can be okay together, you know?
Well,
Well,
yeah,
but
now they
not
are.
well, yeah, but not in the rest of the world
Well,
at
depends
this
what part of
point,
the
but
world. Over there, in fact, we were there on Veterans Day or Remembrance Day,
oh, that's
and there
amazing.
was a ceremony going on. They had a New Zealand, a Kiwi, a Maori
Mhm.
guy from New Zealand
Oh,
gave a
wow.
speech, and then a Turk gave a speech. They dedicated this cemetery with a wreath, and then everybody walked down to the Aegean Sea and took these pine branches and put them in the Aegean Sea as kind of like a tribute to everybody who died there.
Man, that would have been special to be there. I mean, that was special. That was lucky for you to be there. Did you know it was gonna happen, or you're just like,
No, no, it was completely because we had lost track of time because the
yeah.
conference was like the second, it had been the third week of November. So we were there and we just sort of lost track of what date it was, which is you look at the itinerary and say, okay, we're going to do this today. And so that's what you do. You don't really
Mhm.
notice what day it is. Plus, you're all out of whack anyway because it's a day later than what you would expect it to be because
Like me
you're
permanently.
yeah, you're 8 hours, you're another day ahead.
Yeah.
So we saw this and we go, what's going on over here? Oh my God. Somebody said, oh, it's Veterans Day or it's a Remembrance Day. And so we went over and just kind of stood off to the side and watched. And somebody came over and gave us little red poppies to wear.
Wow,
That's
so they're doing
another,
the poppies too. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they gave us little red poppies to pin on us and they invited us to be part of it. They said, well, like, who are you? One of our group was from Australia, our
Oh,
group of travel writers. We said, "Oh, we're travel writers, and we are here to see the see Gallipoli National Historic Park. Is it okay if we just watch and then get some pictures?" Said, "Oh, sure, by all means." And so we did that, and we got to hear the speeches, and then we got to see the dedication and so forth. And
wow.
you know how it is with travel writing, though. You're on a schedule, so they grab you and say, "Come on, come on, come on, we got to go on to the next site."
Yeah. That's a bit because I would wanna go, like, but 80 cemeteries, that is just
But we didn't go to all.
it yeah, you
We
can.
went They
Yeah.
made sure that we saw some Australian and New Zealand ones and also some ones for the Ottomans. And then we saw some of the monuments, like the one I just described with the Turkish guy and the Australian
Mhm,
soldier, and then a few that honored Ataturk because
mhm,
he was a hero in that war, and plus he led the fight for
mhm,
Turkey becoming a republic.
mhm,
See, after World War One, where the Ottomans were on the losing side, Turkey was kind of in the same position that the United States was after the Revolutionary War. We consciously fought for our independence, and we
mm.
wanted to have a country of our own and govern ourselves. But Turkey was kind of, it's sort of like, wow, we have our own republic now. We're a country. We need a government, we need laws, we need a leader. And Ataturk was a natural choice. He was like the George Washington of Turkey because he'd been a military leader, he'd led the fight for independence. And so when they needed a leader, they said, this is a guy. So he became president of Turkey in 1923. And I think remained that until his death in 1938. So
Wow.
the difference between them and us is you can be president for as long as everybody elects you. You're not limited to 8 years. So that's their constitution and that's the way they do things.
Yeah, everyone's a
So
little different. Yeah, it is.
yeah,
And that's the beauty of traveling too. And the other thing, it's like when you're talking about having these short periods of time to go around, that you went to the 2 mosques, you were talking about the market as well, but you also went to the basilica. And, for me going into those places, like we're talking about that opulence, right? I would wanna be there just to look at every little I just wanna see every little because it's so ornate and
You do.
it took years to build that, and that basilica too is, like, exceptional. I mean
That was real. That was interesting. You go down into this because I was wondering, I had never heard of this. So we went and you go down, you walk down these stairs and it's dark. You're in this underground kind of cistern. And this is where they built this to store water because, back then, of course, they had to worry about not only droughts, but let's say they were under siege, like, the city of
Mhm.
Troy allegedly was for 10 years. They got to have water, they got to have food. So you're going to pack the stuff away so it's there in case you need it. So they stored water for the royal palace, the sultanate, and all the surrounding buildings that were connected with it. And so now it's just you got the water in there, but now they use it as kind of like an art exhibit. You walk around, the columns are still there, and the acoustics are fantastic. So they have a lot of musical performances down there. They'll have meetings. People can have like corporate meetings or events. Sometimes things like fashion shows and
Mhm.
exhibits. But you walk around there now, and they've got art exhibits. You walk along, and there's all of a sudden there's a sculpture or just like a little pinnacle made of stone or something like that. They've
Wow.
got somebody made a model of Medusa, and there's some columns that they took from repurposed from some old Roman buildings that had Medusa on them. And they so you're going along, and here's this column or a few of them with Medusa's head upside down. So you can see the snakes of her hair just
That's
kind of
so
slithering
that's
out.
but upside that's crazy, man. That's just it's really amazing when you think about this really ancient history going up into World War One, right? And I know we talked a little World War Two before, but it just dawned on me. I always get the two wars mixed up, and that's I think because we thought World War One, this is over, and it wasn't. There wasn't that much of a gap between the two world wars. I don't think. I mean, if we
No,
have
there
World War
wasn't.
Three, we had a bit of a gap, but not that much either. I mean, it's still
Yeah.
like,
Actually, they didn't refer to World War One as World War One until after World War Two was over. They referred to it as the Great War
the Great
because
War,
they
yeah.
figured that was going to be the last one. It
Yeah.
wasn't until we had World War Two, then you had to distinguish between the two. But after that, I mean, in fact, you bring up saying they were so close together. There are a lot of people in the United States who didn't want to get involved in World War Two because they said no more foreign wars. If they get
Yeah.
into a skirmish over there, let them fight it out. We're not going to be involved. It wasn't until Pearl Harbor was bombed, then everybody was said, okay, that's it. We're done with this. And they got in and started and enlisted. And now we were in there too.
Mhm.
But it wasn't until then. I mean, technically, the United States wasn't attacked because Hawaii wasn't a state yet. However, it was close enough to home because Hawaii was a U.S.
Yeah.
territory. And we had so many Japanese living mainly in California and the West Coast, but throughout the country. And as you probably know, a lot of them got put into internment camps
Yeah.
just because security. I mean, we're in a time of war. You have to make, sometimes you have to do things like that. And
Yeah.
unfortunate as they are.
Yeah. It's going through California, even in the heartland in the Central Valley. A lot of the farmers actually have watch out towers that they had, and it's like, what do you? But yeah, I think for me with the World War One and Two blur is World War One was both wars were important, or the Great War and the second one. But I think living outside of this country for most of my life as a young person until hit adulthood was in England, South Africa, and Kenya. Very British rule, obviously the Dutch too, right? So
Yeah.
and then it's kind of like the Great War, and in England that the stories of those wars were still there, but people were still it's still the silent generation over there for World War II, because it was just like, let's just get past this now. I think everybody had it and seen too many horrific things. I mean, it's traumatic. And that was just
Yeah.
that stiff upper lip, you
Mhm.
know?
It's like,
Yeah, so yeah, it's wild, but I'm so glad you go and get these stories. You really bring history to life with your writing. I was going to ask, are you going to go to the IFTWA conference this year in Lafayette?
No, unfortunately, I can't.
Oh,
I see the way I had everything set up, I had a perfect setup. I did freelance writing for my former company, and everything was, I earned enough money to pay the bills, and that was the bread and butter. So I do that work. It was an intense 7 to 10 days. I turned that in, I got paid, and then everything else I was free to just go where I wanted to go and do travel writing. Unfortunately, they resigned the account that I was working on
Mm.
and they didn't have any other work. So it's been doing I had to do other types of work, and one of the things I ended up doing was teaching a class at Grand Canyon University.
Uh,
So I teach this semester and next semester, and Tuesdays and Thursdays I'm in class. So
mm.
until next May, then that's over, and then I can go. At that point, I'll be almost fully retired. Then I can just go back to just doing travel writing, which is what.
Yeah, well, the life of a travel writer, you bring up a good point because it is just not what everyone thinks. It's a lot of work behind it, you
There's a
know?
lot of work, and also the thing is, at the other side of the story, people think it's great, but like most jobs that everybody wants, it doesn't pay very well. As a matter of fact, I was asked to be a sort of like a panelist on for one of the groups I'm in. They asked us to talk about like the reality of what it's like.
Mhm.
I said, okay, just so everybody knows, if you think you're going to get rich doing this, you probably won't. Hopefully, as you go on, you'll get stories into better publications and you'll earn more money, and you may get lucky if you really, really dedicate yourself and just, camp out on people's doorsteps and to get those stories and get really aggressive about it. There are some people who make a lot of money at it. However, those people are, from what I've seen, are few and far between. And
Mm.
as a joke, I always said, we are like the flight attendants or stewardesses, they were called back in the 60s and 70s. We've got a great job with wonderful travel benefits, and the pay stinks, but at least we don't have to wear pencil skirts, stiletto heels, and get hit on by
My
pilots.
God, no. I know. I love that. It's like you can dress like a travel writer. We can all wear sneakers. That's that's it. Just leave us be. But then the thing is, you can earn your money somewhere else and then you're paying for your vacation and it's different. It becomes a vacation. And I think for travel writers, it is like you're truly living the experience in a different way because you're getting the stories, you're dealing with guides, you have kind of the back door to a place
Yeah,
versus
well,
going
that's
as
what
a regular traveler. And yet you're able to get that information to those and get people to go there so they can have those experiences.
yeah, for example, when we were talking about Gallipoli, where we were there when they were doing the Anzacs dedication ceremony, we were standing there and somebody came over to talk to us and give us poppies. And they said, "Are you guys from Australia?" Well, one of us was, but we said, "Oh, we're travel writers. Most of us are from the US. We just happened to see this and wanted to come over and see what was happening." And they just said, "Oh, well," and they explained what they were doing. And they invited us to watch and be part of it. Now, as a regular tourist, I don't know that they might have done that, but as travel writers, they definitely did because they knew that we would tell the story.
See, that's exactly it. I don't know. It's just a thing. If you've got that thing in you, you've got the thing in you. The travel writing
Yeah.
thing, the
And
travel
the other
bug, the
thing that's nice is
photography,
when you
you
talk to
know.
people and you tell them you're there as a travel writer, you get treated differently. Like I was going to the Blue Mosque, and see what'll happen is people see you walking around. When we got to Istanbul and we had the morning free, and I looked at the map and saw that Hagia Sophia and the Blue Mosque were within a quarter of a mile walking distance to where we are. Now in Istanbul, that's kind of deceptive because a lot of that is straight up or straight
Oh,
down, depending on which direction you're going. But I didn't realize I was gonna have to walk up a hill, but since I really wanted to see it, I didn't care. But anyway, I said, "Get up early," and had breakfast and walked over, and I found where the Blue Mosque was, and this guy just comes up and just starts talking to me. Now what'll happen is they're guides, and what they're trying to do is they pinpoint you immediately as a tourist. So he took me through the Blue Mosque and explained the history, and then we got out, he invited me over to his rug shop.
exactly.
So in other words, this was all I said, "Okay, I see where this is going."
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
yes, they're very pretty, we just don't need any rugs, thank you very much. And that's about where you go with this. But that happens the same thing happened. I walked over to Hagia Sophia, and I wasn't gonna go in because I saw the line, and this guy comes over and says, "Are you gonna go in?" I said, "I can't. I've gotta be back by noon, and I'm not sure I can get through that line." He goes, "I can get you through the line, we'll get in immediately." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." So anyway, we walked in, he gave me all the history, I got my pictures, and came out, and we walked over, and here we go, another sales pitch for a rug.
Well, there you go. There you go. People, well,
But you
hey, at least they gave you something, there's that's about travel. That is all about travel. Well, Marnie, it is always a pleasure having you on this show, and I can't wait for people to read your articles, see your photos. That is linked in the episode notes, as is your website. Give everyone the website.
Yeah, it's mptravelwriting.com, all one word.
Okay.
Thanks very
Thank
much for having me.
It's a good pleasure. And everyone keep up with the International Food Wine Travel Writers Association. Go to IFWTWA.org. And if you are jumping into the world of travel writing, it is fun. It's hard work, but associations like IFWTWA really help in so many ways. Networking,
Amen to
uh,
that.
teaching, helping with social media and webinars and conferences like what they're doing in Lafayette, Louisiana this year. So thanks, everyone. Take care and happy travels. Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio's Food, Wine, and Travel Show, featuring members of the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association. We encourage you to visit their website. We say IFWTWA, which is IFWTWA.org. You can also follow us at bigblendradio.com. Happy travels, everyone.